Well, look, you read the Book of Elsewhere for us.
Yes.
It was co-written by none other than the Keanu Reeves. Was it an excellent adventure? I'm so sorry. With me.
Very well done.
Espelantes.
I feel like there should be a like for
Hopefully, maybe they can put a sound
Surely you
effect
got to
on.
do the
Hang
final
on.
with, or was it a bogus journey? We're not going to go that far.
That's it. Well,
Okay, bear with me and I'll try and explain all this. Keanu Reeves co-wrote this with a man called Tom Mayville. He was at least born Tom Mayville. He's now called China Mayville. I don't know why he's gone from Tom to China, but that's what he is. He's multi-award winning. I mean, he has Guggenheim Awards. He has New York Times bestsellers. He has done a lot of fiction and non-fiction, including non-fiction analysis of Russian history and books on law, Cambridge graduate, all the rest of it. Him and Keanu get together to write a book, which I will do my best to explain the plot of, so bear with me. You have an 80,000-year-old man who is immortal. You probably inferred that into him being 80,000 years, but in case you were unsure, he is immortal. He can be killed, but then he comes back as an egg and returns to himself. He has...
Stop right there. Already, my mind is blown. Carry on.
Oh, we're only at the halfpenny place. He is he's coming to terms with being an 80,000 year immortal man, but he's faced with a number of problems. One, he works in conjunction with, adjacent to, a covert military psyop special team something. And he has a problem where every now and then he has a psychotic break where he kills everybody in about 100-yard radius, which is handy for the psyop SWAT team kind of stuff, but difficult when you're in Tesco's. He roots his psychotic breaks in the... I'm not making this up. He roots his psychotic breaks in the...
You should be a writer.
in the Riashstrad, which is the term for Cuchulain's warrior fugue that Cuchulainn would go into. Same thing. Bad in Tesco's, handy when you're fighting the boys down in North Meath. He does... I'm not using this as a metaphor. It's described as Cuchulain's Riashstrad, spelled wrong, but nonetheless, you give him credit for taking a shot at it. And the lead character says that he knew Cuchulainn, but he didn't like him. So, you have this 80,000-year-old man who's working with the Special Forces come to terms with being immortal, and he is pursued around the world by a 70,000-year-old pig, also which emerges from eggs on a regular basis.
Oh my God.
It's never really fully explained why there's a pig, but the pig hates the man.
As in oink oink.
As in oink oink.
Okay.
Except it's immortal.
Does he talk?
Oh, it's an immortal
No.
pig.
But he hates the other guy.
Okay.
We don't know why.
And pigs can be vicious.
This one particularly, this one has killed him 4 times and put him back in his egg twice. Then there's also possibly his brother, we think, but that's a little bit on the sketchy side. And they're all coming to terms with demigodhood.
You couldn't make that up.
Right? Am I right in saying that this is a very dense book?
It's 380 pages, yes, and it begins, it feels like somebody took a 14-year-old's comic book, handed it to somebody and said, turn this into a 400-page book. Because you look at it and you think, maybe this works visually, but the way the book opens is with 9 characters who have never been introduced to us, all immediately just dumped on us in the middle of a bomb explosion. I should mention as well, it's not all set in the one time zone. We spend some time in the Jurassic era. We spend a little bit of time in the Middle Ages. Now, what I find slightly odd is the lead character, the 80,000-year-old guy who's being pursued by the 70,000-year-old pig, he, when he goes back into the Middle Ages, is an entirely different character. I mean, he acts differently. Now, you could sort of say, well, 1,000 years went by, or 700 years. But if you're 80,000 years old, 700 years ago was last Tuesday. So why is he acting so bizarrely differently in a 700-year period, which is nothing in his overall life? Anyway. So it bounces back and forth through all of that. But what's very weird about it is, at the outset, it feels like whoever your man is, the China lad, that he looked at this and went, I better posh it up because it's a bit juvenile. So he has flung it looks like he just got a thesaurus and tried to make it as hyper complicated as possible, both in terms of structure and in language, that you could possibly do. I can give you some excerpts if you're willing.
Yes, please.
Okay, bear with me.
Brace ourselves.
Now, these are just chosen more or less at random, and it sounds like there needs to be a context to explain this. There is no context. Okay. There genuinely isn't. And he brought the first moment of that 2-pronged Damascene shock that shattered all my paradigms. I come back, he said again, in the calm timbre which made that ghastly claim. I knew that my earlier theories were inadequate to deal with such existential and everyday horrors. I still thought then that what he entrusted to me was an almost fabular truth, as indeed, among other things,
Fabulous.
it was. So, You think I'm done there? Let me add to Fabular. Ziggurat, Sestrugi, Causticity Spillikins, Abjure Puissance, a fellow Hierophant of clandestine knowledge, and my personal favourite, a shrapnel of apotropaic gewgaws and mementos and holy nonsense.
Anton, I'm guessing you didn't really. This wasn't for you.
It wouldn't have. I think somewhere in there. Do you remember the Will
Your
Smith?
voice has gone high. Do you know that?
You went all the way around.
Do you remember the Will Smith movie where Hancock, where he plays an alcoholic
Yes.
superhero? Again, an immortal alcoholic superhero. It's basically that without the alcoholism and the jokes.
Right. And a lot bigger words.
No, they run out after about 60 pages. They use abjure twice, which I think is ironic, which proves like you don't.
Can I actually ask what abjure means?
Abjure effectively means to reject wholeheartedly and disassociate yourself from.
Right. This isn't for you. Possibly not for me.
I
Maybe
don't-
not for you.
I don't think so.
Who do we think it's for? Is it fans of Keanu Reeves and, this kind of graphic stuff that he's done before, that he's
But
published
that's the bit
before?
that I don't get, because oddly, at the outset as well, it's stylistically different. So the first 40 pages where they really went to town on the thesaurus, it has that William Gibson feel to it, which, if you remember one of the early books, one of the early movies that Keanu Reeves was in was Johnny Mnemonic, which was a William Gibson short story. It has that dystopian future thing to it. That then falls away. So you first think, oh, well, it's not the Gibson sci-fi fan that's into this. The 60 first pages are so impenetrable that if you are 14 and like a good old blood and guts, shoot 'em up, Dungeons and Dragons story, you won't last through the first 60 pages. And if you understood the first 60 pages, you get bored by the plot of the second half because we've been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. So I don't know. I think it's a very thin sliced demographic who's going to buy this.
And that's the wonderful thing, about a book club, isn't it? That we end up reading books that, even just your description is blowing my mind. Do you know, we're made to sit outside of the genres that we love.
Oh,
So we've
the other bit.
challenged you, Anton. That's what it was about. It was a challenge.
I forgot a character.
Hey.
They also have another character who's made of bits of the 80,000-year-old man who they bring back to life like Frankenstein.
How many years?
80,000.
80,000.
They're not specific because the dating wasn't good at the time because he predates all of humanity. But it's in the ballpark of 80,000.
Yeah, that's how many years you could lose if you read this book.
Correct.